diddy you. They're gonna diddy the Joe, watch. And they got enough evidence to do it. They're gonna do the diddy. The FBI already diddy them.
I feel sad for her. God bless Remy Ma. I feel sad for her because she, you know, we really loved her. She left the terror squad, and my God, have we been on fire ever since.
New at noon, rapper Fat Joe is being accused of sex acts with minors in a $20 million lawsuit. The rapper's real name is Joseph Cartagena. The man described as his hype man, T.A. Dixon, claims Cartagena, quote, had coercive labor exploitation, financial fraud, sexual manipulation, violent intimidation, and psychological coercion.
It's like straight like, listen, this can't go on. It was about a year or so and some change before I came home. And we talked for about a couple of hours.
Standing in the lobby, shorty got a short skirt on. Your man Joe takes his whole hand, his whole arm, and throws it up.
Hard to say which is more off the hook, a Diddy party or a Diddy after party.
Cuban Link once threw shade at Fat Joe by calling him fruity, but everyone brushed it off like it was nothing. But now Remy Ma just stepped in backing up Cuban's words, and that's got Joe sweating bullets. The old beef between Joe, Remy, and Cuban is exploding again, because Joe's name just got pulled into a fresh lawsuit involving allegations about underage girls. And this might have been exactly what Cuban and Remy were trying to warn us about all along. The drama went nuclear when a shocking lawsuit dropped like a bomb, filed by Joe's own former hype man, Terrence Dixon, aka T.A. News of Joe getting slapped with this lawsuit hit New York media in a flash, and suddenly, everyone was buzzing about it. This scandal hit the airwaves at noon just a couple days ago, and it's been non-stop chaos since. And if you thought fruity was just a petty insult, you better brace yourself, because what TA's claiming Joe was doing behind closed doors is way more disturbing. Now let's break down the guy who kicked off this madness. The man suing Joe, TA, wasn't just some random hype man shouting ad-libs in the background. He rolled with Joe for a massive 16 years. And now TA's spilling the tea, saying he went through years of being used, tossed aside, and ultimately wiped from the picture. He claims those years were packed with ugly abuse, dark secrets, and straight-up illegal moves. Ask ChatGPT. But this ain't about bad deals or missing royalties. This lawsuit is going way beyond music drama and into some seriously dangerous territory. TA's putting Joe on blast, saying he used creepy mind games, made threats, and forced him into embarrassing situations. Some even recorded on video. TA claims he saw Joe with at least 2 girls who were way too young, and a third girl he says Joe caught feelings for, who was also much younger than him. So what was really happening? Were these just short flings or something bigger? First, TA says Joe was with a 16-year-old girl who did things for him in exchange for money, clothes, and help with her bills. Then TA says Joe got involved with a 15-year-old girl he met while performing overseas. Joe would fly her to New York and Miami, and even paid for her to get cosmetic surgery. It didn't stop there. He says Joe fell for another girl he met at 15, and he spent big on her bills, took her on trips, and got her an apartment close to his home in Florida, where he lived with his wife. He even thought about leaving his wife for her. And Joe himself rapped about a young girl in his song, She's My Mama, with lyrics that match what TA is saying now. No surprise that fans are flooding the song's comment section. But this lawsuit isn't just about rumors. It's about bringing serious claims to light. This wasn't just about Joe messing around with underage girls. It was also about all the messed up stuff TA says he had to endure because of Joe. On top of getting underpaid, denied songwriting credits, and having royalties and back-end money hidden from him. TA claims Joe forced him to hook up with women after shows, sometimes while other people were watching, and it gets even darker than that. TA says he was pressured into more than 4,000 acts just to keep his spot in Joe's inner circle, which he now calls the Enterprise. And when he tried to say no, Joe would allegedly threaten to leave him stranded overseas with no way home. This case is so disturbing that the court papers actually start with a trigger warning. Now that this is going down in court, the legal drama is getting wild too. The lawyers repping Fat Joe and TA have beef of their own, adding even more heat to this mess. If the name Tyrone Blackburn rings a bell, it's because he's the same lawyer behind those huge Diddy lawsuits that sparked DHS raids in both LA and Miami. Tyrone even called out Joe's lawyer, Joe Tane, on Instagram. And right now, it looks like this case is turning into a full-on spectacle. With Tyrone backing TA, it's looking like way more than a random cash grab. It feels like a planned legal attack aimed at some of the most protected circles in hip-hop. Meanwhile, Joe's lawyer is firing back, calling these accusations pure lies. Joe Tane says this whole lawsuit from TA and his team is nothing but revenge for a civil case Joe already filed against TA himself. And that brings us to the next point. Joe actually hit TA with a lawsuit first, way back in April. Before things blew up legally, TA was already making crazy claims about Joe online, and Joe wasn't having it. Fat Joe clapped back at TA by filing a big lawsuit, accusing him of trashing his name all over social media. And it was over the same issues we're hearing about now. Joe sued TA for allegedly spreading lies about getting cheated out of money and being dragged into all kinds of messed up situations. One example TA shared was a time Joe made a girl's life hell, and TA says he was forced to join in. TA talked about that during a podcast he jumped on last year, laying out what he claimed really went down. But that was just the start. TA took things way beyond a few interviews. He launched a whole Instagram page dedicated to mocking Fat Joe in every way possible. One time, he posted a photo of Diddy, Fat Joe, and DJ Khaled together with a caption saying, "Fat Joe and DJ Khaled, what happened? Now you're gonna act like you don't know Diddy sucker-ish? Y'all don't want to be part of that baby oil, I see. But don't act like y'all weren't with him." Then he threw it back with a pic of himself, Joe, and their crew during the time they were kidnapped in Angola, using it to drag up old drama and keep the heat on Joe. And this wasn't just about airing out old stories. TA was on a mission to expose what he says happened behind the scenes, stirring up even more controversy as the legal battle kept heating up. When Joe and Remy dropped Out of Control a few months back, TA jumped right in, clowning Joe by posting a screenshot from the video and writing, "Ladies, imagine waking up next to this saggy bag every morning. Lil Joey, you are just terrible." And it didn't stop there. TA kept the shots coming for months straight, before Joe finally had enough and slapped him with a lawsuit. Joe fired back through the media, saying these claims about him owing TA money were flat-out lies, and his lawyer called the whole thing a straight-up extortion play by a bitter ex-team member trying to cash in. But the big question is, who's actually telling the truth here? To figure out if TA was right or just making stuff up, we've got to dig into Joe's past. And there's no better place to start than the mess with Remy Ma and Cuban Link, who also turned on Joe before TA did. So what did Remy have to say? Joe and Remy go way back, tight like family during the Terror Squad days, but their relationship hit a nasty split that got personal, public, and super messy. Right after Big Pun passed, Joe didn't waste any time bringing Remy into Terror Squad, putting her right in the spotlight on Lean Back, and giving her a major push to blow up. But when it was time for Remy to drop her debut album, everything fell apart fast. Remy felt like Terror Squad, and especially Joe did her dirty. She claimed the rollout was weak, her album wasn't promoted right, and behind closed doors, she pinned the blame directly on Joe, saying he didn't want her to shine and left her hanging when she needed him the most. That's when Remy started airing Joe out in public, shots fired with no filter. And here's where it got real messy. Joe wasn't just mad, he was straight up hurt. In an interview, he flat out said, "I could never forgive Remy Martin. She really hurt my feelings." This wasn't just some music industry beef. Remy was out there disrespecting his whole family. And for Joe, that crossed a major line. Joe even said in an old Smack TV interview that it was a blessing Remy decided to leave Terror Squad. And ever since she was gone, things were nothing but success for him and his crew. Not long after, Remy landed behind bars, and during her time locked up, she and Joe didn't speak at all. The tension just sat there, heavy and unresolved for years. But once she got out, it was like everything changed overnight. They finally met face to face, talked everything out, and not long after, they dropped all the way up together, back on top like nothing ever happened. A few months before Remy got released, she actually called Joe from prison, saying she wanted to squash the beef and make things right. Vlad TV later sat down with both Remy and Joe, and Remy admitted on camera that she was reckless back then, young, frustrated, and had no clue how to move smart in the industry. Joe said they both grew up, matured, and chose to bury the grudge for good. But while Remy and Joe patched things up, the same can't be said for Fat Joe and Cuban Link. Unlike with Remy, Joe's beef with Cuban is still very much alive and kicking. The bad blood never went away, and the drama is still simmering just below the surface. Now let's get something straight real quick. Cuban Link has been coming for Fat Joe for years, and he's never been shy about it. Back in 2021, Cuban jumped online with what he claimed was paperwork proving that Fat Joe was out here snitching, giving up info to the cops about crimes in the Bronx, and even helping make people disappear for good. He dropped screenshots and documents trying to blow the whole thing wide open. But here's the kicker. Nothing was ever confirmed. Nobody could prove the paperwork was real, and Fat Joe fired right back, brushing it all off like it was nothing but noise. Fast forward to late 2024, and Cuban changed up his game. This time, he started accusing Joe of having a shady, racist past. Cuban claimed people in the industry had stories to tell, and he even shared some of his own, saying Joe had made questionable comments and acted in real suspect ways. There wasn't any criminal dirt this time, but the personal drama got even deeper, adding to years of tension between them. And let's not forget, Cuban's biggest beef has always been about how he says Joe did him dirty in the music business. He's been loud for years about how Joe blocked his shine, messed with his money, and never kept it real. That's why, just 3 days ago, Cuban Link jumped online again after seeing Fat Joe's lawsuit splash across TMZ, and he didn't waste a second. He straight up called it out. Fat Joe is next. According to Cuban, the feds are watching Joe heavy right now, and he's convinced they're getting ready to hit Joe hard. Cuban made it clear he thinks it's only a matter of time before everything catches up to him. Here's Cuban straight up saying Joe is next on the chopping block. They're gonna get you. They're gonna watch you. Cuban claimed the FBI has already been on Joe's trail and insisted this isn't some random internet rumor. He says he's got receipts, and the craziest part? Cuban thinks Fat Joe basically set himself up for this mess. If all this stuff coming out turns out to be true, Cuban says Joe's got nobody to blame but himself. And there's even more reasons Cuban thinks Joe's days walking free might be numbered. Cuban said there could be some truth to TA's wild story. After all, Cuban was there back in the day, right in the middle of everything. And now he wants to hear TA's side straight from him. Plus, Cuban can't believe Fat Joe has the nerve to sue TA. He pointed out that TA wrote songs for Joe without even getting paid. And now Joe's hitting him with a lawsuit like he didn't owe him anything. Cuban said the whole situation is turning real dark, and it's giving off straight-up Diddy vibes. And it's no shock Cuban brought up Diddy, because Diddy and Joe partied together heavy back in the day. Joe's been open about how wild Diddy's parties used to get, saying they were off the hook. During that 2005 MTV commercial, Fat Joe made it crystal clear what kind of wild stuff went down at those Diddy freak-offs, adding even more fuel to the fire that's burning around him right now. Joe even cracked jokes about Diddy being the king of deception when it comes to wild party antics. And let's be real, that's a loaded statement coming from someone who was right there in the middle of it all. Here's where things get real interesting. If Fat Joe was always hanging around the biggest players in the industry, could he have seen way more than he ever let on? There's tons of photos floating online showing Joe smiling ear to ear at events, always talking about how insane and fun the vibe was. But now, with all these lawsuits and dark stories about Diddy spilling out into the open, everyone's side-eyeing anyone who was chilling in those VIP rooms, and Fat Joe was definitely one of those guys. We're not saying Joe did anything, but when you're that close to the fire, it's hard to believe you didn't feel some heat. What's even funnier is how 50 Cent jumped right on the recent Fat Joe drama as soon as Joe's name started popping up in the headlines. 50's always the first in line to clown Diddy when any news about him breaks, so it's got people wondering, is there some old beef playing into this? Let's not forget, 50 Cent and Fat Joe used to hate each other's guts. That beef was straight up legendary. It all kicked off because Joe was cool with Murder Inc. And back then, 50 was on a mission to burn Murder Inc. to the ground. Naturally, Fat Joe got caught in the crossfire, and the two went at it hard. Diss tracks dropping left and right, interviews getting spicy, and shots fired on both sides. Who could forget that chaotic moment at the 2005 VMAs when they were throwing shade at each other live on stage? For years, it was war. 50 clowning Joe, Joe firing right back, both of them trying to one-up each other in the streets and in their music. But fast forward to today, and the vibe is completely different. By 2024, these two did a total 180. They flipped the script entirely. 50 even went on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, talking about how he and Joe are basically best friends now, laughing it up like all that past beef never even happened. 50 Cent straight up said, "Later, we became best friends." According to 50, the beef between him and Joe was never personal. It was all about who was riding with who back during that wild Murder Inc. era. Once the heat cooled down, 50 actually started respecting Joe's loyalty, even calling him loyal to a fault. And Fat Joe kept it just as real. Joe said he respected 50 too, and even admitted that their feud helped lock in his status as a heavyweight in the New York rap scene. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. With everything going on with Diddy and Fat Joe getting dragged into crazy allegations, 50's been oddly quiet, almost defensive even. A lot of people thought 50 would have already roasted Joe by now, but instead, he's been showing him support. 50 even went on Instagram and posted a photo of him and Joe sitting courtside at a basketball game. His caption read, "These baseless accusations and claims are not credible. I'm sorry Joe has to endure the public scrutiny and damage to his reputation. This a stick-up." Joe jumped right in the comments and dropped a 100 emoji to show he appreciated the backup. But with 50 Cent, you never really know where things will go next. He's a master at flipping the script when you least expect it. One minute he's got your back, and the next he might just start clowning you all over again. And it's definitely a little sus to see this kind of behavior coming from 50, a guy who lives to troll everyone, especially his old enemies. The comments are flooded with people noticing the same thing, proving our point big time. So what's really happening here? Did squashing that beef come with some secret alliance? Or does 50 know something about what went down at those infamous parties that he's not saying? All we're saying is, when two former rivals suddenly start acting like besties right in the middle of a scandal, you gotta wonder what kind of tea they're really sipping behind closed doors. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.